Hey, welcome to the Lunch and Learn, I guess, here in the Divorce and Unite community. Great to see you guys. Happy Tuesday. It's a Real Talk Tuesday here in the Divorce Women Unite community. So I'm going to give people a moment to join the broadcast. I'm also going to tag a few people while we're waiting for Facebook to send out notifications. Hello. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you. Come on in. I'm going to tag a few people. Just give me a moment here. Hope everybody's doing good. Let's see. Hope everybody is well today. Welcome. Hey, you guys, let me know that you're here. Hey, Jasmine, great to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about how to school at home during the pandemic. How to school at home during the pandemic. So if you're doing the broadcast live or by replay, make sure that you share the broadcast out. And in addition, tag a friend, tag a bestie, super friend here in the community or even outside the community, okay? So make sure you do that. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to belabor the message anymore. So listen, again, welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea M. Stuckey, the divorce liberator and your favorite divorce coach, the founder of this amazing community, Divorce Women Unite. I'm also the founder of Live Life Love Coaching and the Divorce to Destiny Academy, where we help women rebuild, redefine, and liberate their lives following separation and divorce. So I am super excited today to talk about how to school at home during the pandemic. How to school at home during the pandemic. Now, this was requested here in the community, and so I decided I would come and talk about this. And I'm going to share, how I am or why I am at liberty to talk about this particular subject. So, hey, Teresa, see you here. Welcome to the broadcast, you guys. As you're watching the broadcast, I want this to be interactive, right? So if you have questions, make sure you engage. Leave comments if you're watching by replay. And also don't forget to thumbs up and heart it up. That lets me know you're there and the information is resonating with you on today. So week 7 of the pandemic, right? And so many of you have already gone through this sort of transition. We are just at the end of April going into May. And so depending on the part of the country that you're living in, in our area here in Virginia, technically our kids would have been in school another 2 months almost, right? May to mid-June. Okay. And so depending on what part of the country that you're in and you're watching this from, some of you may be, would technically be at the end of your school year, maybe finishing up sometime in May, right? However, we know that this pandemic has changed a lot of the dynamics, really unfortunately, for a lot of the kids that are in school, that are in colleges, and I think that's a whole nother topic, but we do want to acknowledge those seniors, those children, unfortunately, who are not able to go to their prom and their high school activities. I remember that as being such a great time, and so we have to keep them in the forefront of our mind because, we have our challenges as adults, but they have their challenges, right, as well, right? They're missing their friends and all those type of things. So I just wanted to talk about that really, really briefly. So depending on the part of the country that you are in, you may be looking at the dynamic of your home, quote unquote, school environment. Right. And so for many of you, when you made this initial transition, you may have been like, hey, I don't know how to school my kids. I don't know what this is going to look like. I've got to work from home, all these different things. So we're going to talk about all these things. I have 5 amazing tips for you today. There are resources that I'm going to provide for you at the end of this video. So make sure you watch it all the way to the end. Okay. All the way to the end. And the information that you receive here on today is applicable right now. And it's also applicable in the future if you still have children at home, okay, who are going to school. So I love this topic. And let me tell you why I'm at liberty to speak on this topic. Because many of you know, and some of you don't, who'll be watching my replay or possibly on another platform, I homeschool my oldest daughter, who is now 26, for 10 years. I homeschooled for 10 years, okay? And so during my second divorce, after a year of separation, both my kids went back to traditional school, my oldest going in school as a 12th grader, and my youngest going in private school as a second grader, okay? So I have done this thing. I have been at home with my kids. All that stuff that I'm going to talk about today, I have actually done, not in theory, but I've actually lived it, okay? In addition, my youngest daughter right now is in the 10th grade, and I homeschooled her for 8th grade. And during that process, she did 3 classes at home and 3 classes at a co-op, which is a whole different, homeschool thing. There's facilities that will teach kids as well, like 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the subject and that type of thing, right? That's another topic. But so I've just done this again a couple of years ago in a very different space, right? Working primarily from home, right? And that kind of thing. So I just want to share some things with you on today. I want you to stay encouraged. I want you to be mindful. I want you to pay close attention to what I'm sharing with you on today, because I think this is some great nuggets of wisdom. And I'm not just patting myself on the back, but I mean, I know what I know, right? Because I have walked this journey as a divorced woman, as a single woman, as a married woman, right? So I've been in this space, right? So I want to share something very, very important to you. So I want to start off today. So if you're out there, come on, tap that screen. Let me see a couple of hearts. That's fine. That's fine. You're multitasking. That's great. That's great. Thank you for just being a part of the broadcast, right? So if you're here, let me know. Again, make sure you tag someone in the community, someone that you've seen, that go ahead and invite them to the live broadcast. So I have a quote for you on today that I want you to think about. And even those who you are watching, maybe you have adult kids, right? And your kids are already out of the house, but I want you to think about something. Hey, Chantel, there may come a day where you have grandchildren, right? And so you've come across some information that perhaps you'll be able to share with your adult children, or maybe you already have grandchildren, right? And then maybe you can share this information with your adult children who are homeschooling their children, right? Hey, Chantel, great to see you. So here's a quote that I want to share with you on today. And it says this: there is no school equal to a decent home, and no teacher equal to a virtuous parent. Listen again. There is no school equal to a decent home, and no teacher equal to a virtuous parent. And that quote is by Gandhi. Why did I choose that? Because yes, my kids have been in public, private, and homeschool, okay? But oftentimes we minimize our abilities as a parent, right? And so the women who are watching this broadcast, watching by replay, or even men who may be watching it as it goes out on another platform, listen, you know your kids better than anyone else. Right? And so this time that we've been in the pandemic, right, for many of you, you haven't had that type of time around your kids. Right? And so this is very, very important, because what happens is, hey, Shireen, what happens is, unfortunately, society will have us believe, and I'm just going to say it the way it is, and not taking anything away from the school system, not taking anything away from the teachers. Listen, like I said, my daughter's in public school. She's been in private school. My oldest daughter graduated from public school, but I also homeschooled 10 years. Right? But there is no one who knows your child better than you. So don't underestimate your abilities, especially those of you who have children who are 5th grade and under. Okay? 5th grade and under. Don't minimize your abilities. Right? And so I've seen, I've been watching, hey, Howard, thank you so much. I've been, just reading different posts over the past 7 weeks on various platforms, people I know, people I don't know, and hearing the agony in a lot of very educated, very well-rounded adults who, feel in this area when it comes to schooling their children, they feel like incompetent. Right? And how many of you know that it's really just a mindset? Right? Because we know how to read, write, and do arithmetic, right? Now, I can understand once you start moving into, middle school and high school and some of the higher mathematical, subjects, algebra, trigonometry, calculus, those type of things. I can definitely understand how that can be a challenge. I get that, right? But especially those who have the younger kids. I'm going to share some great information. Yes, parents are the first teachers, Teresa, with you on today. And I'm excited because this is my area, right? So this is my thing. When I tell you, y'all in for a treat, okay? So just hang on with me. So what qualifies me to talk on this subject, right? So let me be clear. I already said some of this, but let me go down my list so I don't miss anything. So I homeschooled my oldest daughter for 10 years, right? Until the 12th grade. During that time, right? Very smart girl, okay? During that time, she took the SAT in the 8th grade. She was in talented and gifted programs through Johns Hopkins, through William and Mary. She transferred seamlessly into the public school system. She became a member of the National Honor Society when she was in high school. And this is not a small high school. This is our county high school here. And she graduated 16th in the class, having transitioned. Okay. She went on to receive a partial academic scholarship to Old Dominion University, where she studied civil engineering for 2 years, joined the National Guard. After her 2nd year, she decided to leave ODU. That's another story. But I want to show you that process, okay? My youngest daughter, she went to private school for 2nd grade. She was on the honor roll the entire time. 8th grade, I homeschooled her. Like I told you guys, half at home, half with a co-op. She interviewed in our county, we have what's called a specialty centers in our public school system. And so she got into the leadership and international studies program at a local Chesterfield school that I drive her to when we're in school 100 miles a day. Okay. And she's also an honor roll student. She's taking AP classes, doing very well, extremely well-rounded. Right. And so what is my point? My point is I've been in this journey for a minute, right? No, I'm not an educator, right? I'm not going to speak from the space of managing classrooms and that type of thing, but I can tell you about teaching your kid at home and what that requires. I can definitely teach you that, right? And so Teresa said her daughter went to ODU. Yeah, I remember she graduated a couple years ago, right, Teresa? Thank you, Chantel. I appreciate it, right? So even as you guys are divorced, I want you to remember that when I first went through my separation, this is all relative because schooling at home is schooling at home, right? When I went through my 2nd divorce, I was homeschooling my kids. And so I continued to homeschool during that 1st year, right? And I was picking up all the hours that I could at the hospital that I was working at the time. And so I would be working night shift, getting off, teaching my youngest daughter, right? Because she was probably in 1st grade or so, teaching her reading, writing, arithmetic, right? The basics. Taking my oldest daughter she was doing some classes at home, and she was also already attending a local community college for a couple classes, and then she went to a co-op, right? So if you guys have a question about what a co-op is, put it in the comment section. I'll explain, right? But she went to a co-op, couple classes at home, couple classes at the community college. And then if you guys have ever heard me tell the story, so we were doing that during the day. During the afternoon, somebody was going to therapy somewhere, including myself. There were activities, gymnastics, and basketball at the time, travel basketball. And we would also 1 or 2 days a week go to, it was a codependency support group that I was going to, and I took my kids with me. And then I would come home, sleep a little bit, and go to work at 11 at night. Okay, so for those of you who are working from home or working and you're teaching your kids, that's what I'm sharing that story for, because I can totally understand and I can totally relate. Okay, so let's move on here, right? So, okay, so the keys, I want to make sure I don't miss anything, right? And so the first thing I want to share with you, point number 1, when you're in this transition, you got to get to know your children almost all over again, right? You got to get to know your children all over again. So let me just share. My oldest daughter, when we decided to transfer her out of, at the time, she was in a private Christian school, okay? And I'm not going to get into the reasons we took her out, but we decided to homeschool her, right? The goal was really just for a year. And so, hey, Louisa, great to see you. So got her home for a year. And so what I did at the time of my first year homeschooling, the curriculum that they were using at the private school was able to be purchased by homeschooling parents. And so I literally purchased the entire curriculum for home use, and just used it at home. She was familiar with the text. She was familiar with the, the way the schedule was laid out. And that's how I began to teach her. And so I approached it with, I'm going to make my point here. I approached it with the school mindset, right? That, okay, let's go over this lesson, because I had the teacher's notebook. Let's go over all these examples. Okay, how many of you know about tons of examples? Have you guys seen your kids come home with a lot of busy work? Well, that was how the curriculum was great, but it had a lot of busy work in it designed for a classroom environment. But because I had the mindset of a classroom environment as a new homeschool parent, I was trying to get her to do all these examples. And so my daughter was like, I don't need to do that. I already know how to do that. And so my reply was, great. It'll be perfect review for you. Well, listen, that just didn't go over well. And if you think about it, it didn't make much sense, right? Because if a child has mastered a skill, then let's allow the child to go on to the next task. Right now, we know in a classroom environment, you really can't do that. We got to kind of keep everyone on the same pace. But when you have your kids at home, you can allow them that freedom, if you will, and interest, right? Because for those precocious children, they want more. Right? And here's the opposite. If they need more time, you can give them that time. Right? So it's important that you get to know your children again. Right? And so when I say get to know them, I want you to think about this. Do you know what type of learner your child is? Is your child a visual learner, an audio learner, or a kinesthetic learner? Right? Do you know what type of learner you are? If you do, type it in the comment section. What type of learner are your children? Right? What type of learner are you? Because we all process information differently. Right? So once you know that about your children and you're assisting them with their work and they may be having challenges, then there may be a better way that you can reach them that the classroom may not be able to reach them. Right, so let me give you some very simple, practical examples, right? So I'm a visual learner, right? So whatever I put my eyes on, I can remember, right? Whatever I write down, see it, color code it, I can remember, right? And I've done this my entire life, from high school to college to advanced exams in the healthcare field, all those things, right? Chantel says she's a visual learner, right? So you have to know that so you can know how to relate to your children. So let me give you a very simple example, right? So if you're teaching your young child addition, right, and they're learning the concept of addition, right? This is how you can use the three different aspects of learning to teach that child addition, right? So initially for the visual learner, you have a whiteboard or you have a worksheet or you have a piece of paper, right? And you can write down a picture, one. You can actually write the numbers or you can write a picture, 1 + 1, or you can even do tick marks. You guys remember that? Old school, listen, it's not outdated. Because many of us old people can compute much better than younger people. Let's give ourselves a pat on the back, right? But you can write that down, okay? The second way is, and how many of you remember this? We've got a little age on you. Audio, right? If you have a child who learns, who is an audio learner, right? Then you can sing songs to them, right? So you guys remember Schoolhouse Rock? Remember those now when we talked about accounting, right? Anybody remember that? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. That was a song on a cartoon. But we learned how to count by fives through that song, right? And so a lot of children learn better hearing things, right, than they do necessarily seeing it. And then you have our kinesthetic learners. And a lot of those learners kinesthetically are our engineers. They are our hands-on people, mechanics and things, people who like to use their hands. Right? You guys following me? Y'all still there? Let's see some hearts going up or whatever. I see people on the broadcast. Right? So you can take objects. And so my youngest daughter, I specifically had these little bears that we used a lot for math, right? But you can put a bear over here or 2 bears over here, 2 teddy bears over there, right? They were small little bears, and have them actually touch them and count them. And they can see that process. Does that matter? Now, does that make sense? That's a very small way to show you, but you can use that in any area, even for older children. Right? You can take a book and you can have them follow along on the book, but also listen via Audible or audio tapes. right? For your audio learners, right? You want your kinesthetic learners to be able to touch. Now, we know that a lot of these things have to be done on workbooks and papers, but when we're learning concepts, you have to understand and know how your child learns. So that's my first challenge and task for you today. Do you know how your child learns? Is he visual, an audio learner, or a kinesthetic learner? And then when you sit down to assist them in whatever they're doing in whatever area, this can be helpful to you to help teach them a particular concept. Does that make sense? Let's see some comments in the comment section. Right? And also, you're able to focus on whatever their weaknesses are. You know, as I said before, they may want to jump onto the next, but you can also stay where they're stuck and give them more time. Right? So we can take a look at this downtime in the pandemic as an opportunity. Opportunity for the quick learners to move faster, and for the kids that need a little more time, for them to catch up, right? Or to learn and solidify their concepts, right? Thank you, Teresa, right? To solidify their concepts. The second thing is having children at home and teaching them routine is key. Routine is key. Now, my routine that I used to use versus your routine is going to be very different. But kids need, especially, you know, I always like to say that our 5th grade and younger, even the middle schoolers, but definitely 5th grade and younger, they need routine. They need to know what is expected, right? And that makes them feel safe, and that makes them be able to concentrate on what is next. They know what's coming next. They know if it's math, they know if it's story time, they know if it's time to go out in the yard and run around, they know if we used to go to the library a lot, if it's a library day, all these things, right? And so really quickly, I want to show, because I still have this stuff, you guys. This was no joke. Can you see this? Lesson Planner 2009 to 2010. You see this? This is because I had 2 children, and I created this planner. So listen, I've been creating books for a long time, okay? All right. So here's the thing. I'm not saying you have to do all this, right? But I want to share some tips with you, because the reality is we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. Now, my daughter's 15. She's a little bit older, so I have a very different dynamic. But for those of you who have younger kids, organization and routine is going to be key in managing your household. And also, not just managing your household, but so that they can learn and the instruction can be effective. Right? So the instruction can be effective, right? So I just wanted to share really quick, you know, there were things in every year that I would put in my planner, but let's see if I can just show you really quickly. Okay, here we go, right here. None of this has changed. Anybody who works with me knows that this is how nothing has changed. Okay? This was how we did things. Right? On Monday, we did this. On Tuesday, we did this. On Wednesday, we did that. Snack is here, 10 to 15. We traveled on Monday from 12 to 1:30, whatever. Because I'm saying this because a couple of things. One, as I already said, we don't know how long we're going to be in this. 2, organization is key. But 3, I believe that many parents who are homeschooling right now, because they got thrusted into it, are going to recognize some of the benefits for their family and for their children, right? And so if you're watching this live or watching it by replay, you can do this, especially with the 5th grade and below. You can do this, right? Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, 6th grade and up, but I understand people may not feel comfortable with math and things like that. And I also want you to understand that there are a ton of resources available. Even if you haven't done algebra in 30 years, they have self-teaching texts, DVDs that do whiteboard. There's so much available. And so if you're watching and your kids are challenged, I'm going to give you resources at the end. There are things that you can do to help your kid. Never underestimate yourself, right? You're so much stronger, as I always say, than you think, and you're so much smarter than you think, right? You know your children best. And routines are key. So that's point number 2. Routines are key. I think I wanted to share something else from here. Hang on one second. right? And then, we talk here about, for those of you who are here, and we talk about Sunday planning, right? Pray, prepare, and plan. Listen, that should be part of your planning. If you're schooling your kids at home on Sundays as a single woman, many of you, you're single, you're here, you're in the Divorced Women Unite community, then the planning is key. And so if you want to decrease your stress and anxiety in this time, in this new dynamic that you're living through, planning is key. Not only for you, but for your children. Young children like to know what to expect. And so when you think about the classroom environment, they know what they're going to expect, right? And so you have to create that for them. Right now, that calls that we have to be accountable too, right? To hold through, to hold to that schedule. And you don't have to be super rigid, 10:05, but general day, right? How the day is going to flow. That is very, very, very important. Anybody have any questions so far? I've got 3 more topics that I want to quickly go through. I said number 1, get to know your children. What type of learner are they? What are their needs in this season? Number 2, routine is key for expectations and results. And remember, it doesn't have to be, super rigid. I'm more on the rigid side. I'm just saying. But, you don't have to be that rigid, but you want to have a general flow to your days, and maybe certain days there are things that you do a little bit different, and they can expect that. On Wednesday we go here, or Saturday we're going to, even on Saturdays, right? We're going to do a certain thing. Right? So that is key. So point number 4, for those of you who have older children, right? I think what's important is allowing them to be a part of their own education. Right? So whatever you're dealing with right now, according to them, how can they best achieve what they need to achieve? Right? Some kids are early morning birds. Some kids are later. At the end of the day, as long as you're getting results, we understand this is not the classroom, right? But there are still goals and objectives that need to be met, because at the end of the day, when these kids get back to school, we don't know what the expectation is going to be. Are they really going to spend 5 extra months on review? I don't think so. And so for those who are sitting back and just sitting on their loins, it's going to be a challenge. Because one thing that we do know, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute as well, especially for the younger kids, they lose a lot of their skills during the summer. And this point that we're in, this is longer than summer, right? My daughter's last day of school was March 13th, or either they canceled March 13th. So we are here in April, May, June, July, August, September. You're talking about 6 months. We cannot let these kids be idle for 6 months. Real talk. Okay. I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I'm serious, right? So we've got to really look at this thing, because listen, our kids are our responsibility, right? Just like I always tell us as women, no one's coming to save us. And so our kids are our responsibility. It's no one's job to save our children, if that makes sense. Right? That's our responsibility to oversee their education and what they're getting and what they need. And we need to meet those needs, right? And we have the ability to do that. Even as a single mother, even as a divorced mother, you can do this, right? There's a ton of support out here available to you, and you can do this. Chantel says, I'm glad you're bringing this. I have young little cousins. Absolutely. Right? So it may not be applicable to you, because Chantel, I know you have a senior, but there can be, like I said, some of you have grandchildren, right? Some of you have cousins, and you can encourage the parents, is my point, right? We can't be dogmatic and tell people what to do with their kids, but you can encourage them. And, I'm going to share some resources that are definitely thought-provoking that I'd like to share with you, right? So point number 3, as I was saying with the older children, give them a little autonomy and say, hey, well, what can you do? Or what is your schedule going to look like? That's what my daughter and I have been talking about. Right? What's next? Because at the end of the day, they have to decide whether they're going to be in 9th, 10th, 11th, 8th grade. How do they want to show up in September? Do you want to sit in a classroom, totally have forgotten all of your information? Or do you want to walk in the classroom feeling a lot more confident than you did, because you had more time to spend on the subjects that may have been a little challenging? Right? I believe in taking every negative situation and pulling and extracting the positive out of it. right? And so this is for younger kids and for older kids, right? But at the end of the day, we can't make them do anything, right? We can, but you understand what I'm saying? And do we want to, right? We talked about yesterday about self-motivation. You have to have a reason behind, right? So what are your older children's, what are their reasons for taking these classes? Do they desire to go to school? Do they desire to go to the military? Even going to the military, listen, you got to take a test, right? And the higher you score on the test, the more options you have in the military, whether it's Air Force, Army, Navy, Air Force, Navy, right? Marines, whatever it is. Everything there's a requirement. If you want to play college sports, right, then you have to prepare for that, right? And one of the things these kids don't understand, and I know because my daughter was kind of up for playing athletics in college, but she did not. We went the academic route versus athletic route for several reasons. But the point is that the NCAA has requirements too, right? How do I know that? I have a nephew who got a scholarship at ECU, a full scholarship, and went on to play in the NFL, right? But the colleges that he went well, that's a great school, but the college that he wanted to attend, he didn't know how that sliding NCAA scale works, right? So there's power in information. So what am I saying? What does this have to do with your older students? What is their why and motivation? Where do they want to go after high school? What do they desire to do? And what's going to take them there? Right? And so you can sit down. This is a great time to talk about that stuff because it's real. It's nothing fake about it. You know, there's nothing fake about it. So give them a little autonomy. What are their goals? What are their objectives? You know, how can they get their work done on a regular basis to achieve the results that they want? Point number 4, you know, understand that home is not school. And what do I mean by that? I alluded to it in the beginning. I was trying to recreate school at home. I wanted my oldest daughter at that time in 2nd grade to do all the worksheets, all the problems, all of that. And she didn't need that, right? The reality is kids don't have to work 6-7 hours a day either, right? Because think about the bus ride to school, there's lunch, there's, going to the time in between classes, there's lunch, I said lunch already, right? There's PE, there's all these other times that fill some of those, that time. And so they don't necessarily have to study or be in school per se at home for 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever it is they go to school. Does that make sense? Right? So understand that and be flexible. Right? Be flexible. You've got, even though you have routine, but we've got to be flexible in some ways. And you have to decide what's best for your personality, the age of your children, and your children's personalities. Right? Hey, Gloria, great to see you. One of the things that I'll share that I thought was funny, I'll share this little story. I remember my oldest daughter, she loved math, obviously, and she wanted to do her math assignments listening to audiobooks. And I'm like, you cannot listen to audiobooks and do your math work. So because I can't do that. Right? So we're talking about flexibility because I can't do that. And remember, that's not something you see in the traditional classroom, right? But what I found out was she could listen to music. She could literally listen to, like I said, those audiobooks. We used to get them from the library at the time while she was doing her work. Right? So I had to learn that, okay, maybe I can't do that. She is at home. Let the girl work the way she works best. Does that make sense? So we've got to learn to be flexible, right? Because the home environment is not the school environment. Does that make sense? Y'all rocking with me still? I see a few hearts or thumbs up. And then 5th and finally, so I'm going to go through my bonus and we'll be wrapping up shortly. Quick intermission. Let me just remind you that our Rebuilding the Inner Me group coaching program starts on Monday. If you have not registered, go and register. We have an awesome 2-payment plan. Half the payment will get you signed up. That's one of our most popular 4-week programs. We're going to start next Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you register. And all the details can be found at bit.ly/ Rebuilding the Inner Me, all lowercase, all one word. Make sure you sign up. Be there. This is the time. This is the season to, rebuild your confidence, look forward, learn more about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, so that you can be in position for the rest of this year. It's time out for staying stagnant. Okay? Break over. Right? Shameless plug, but that's real talk, right? So here's the thing. Point number 5, right? So we just talked about being flexible, but point number 5, be patient. Change takes time, right? So no matter what has come up during these 7 weeks or 6 weeks, right? And if you've seen your errors, or you recognize, hey, this is something that I can implement even through the summer, right? Or this is an area I hadn't thought about. Let me take a look and see how my child learns. Let me pay attention. Let me try some different things with them, right? Be patient with the process, right? Change takes time. And again, unfortunately, we don't know what this situation is going to turn out to be. We really, really don't. So we want to prepare ourselves as single moms, single women, on how we can implement this with our children, and also how we can share with others, as I've been saying, sharing information, sharing with your adult kids and your grandchildren and that type of thing, because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So be patient. Change takes time. So before I get into my resources that I want to share with you, I want to remind you, there are 2 things that I found in educating my kids over these seasons, right? Is that math and reading should always be, right? And for your younger children, create challenges, right? Let them order off of Amazon some books, right? Get those books in the mail. Because sometimes there's nothing like touching a book. I'm a bibliophile, so I don't know. I'm old school. I listen to audiobooks. I read on Kindle, and I have a whole shelf all over the house of books, right? But there's nothing like touching that book, right? And these kids get exposed through reading. And also what's important for you with younger children is reading aloud. You reading aloud to your children and having them read aloud to you. If they are never reading aloud, we want to make sure that they're fluent. I'm not saying you're not doing this, but I just want to hone in on it, because sometimes we can get very busy, right? That they're reading aloud and that they have that smoothness and clarity, and they know how to decipher the syllables and words and that type of thing when they're younger, right? When they're younger. Because listen, old school, grades 5 and under, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? And so when we say writing, I know they're not teaching cursive writing, but they need to know how to communicate via writing. Science is going to come, history is going to come, but you can't do science and history if you can't read well, if you can't write well, and if you can't calculate well. Let's be really clear, because science requires calculations. And you had advanced sciences, chemistry, pharmacy, if you're in the health sciences field, you got to be able to calculate. Right? Y'all still with me? Right? So you've got to be able, so reading, writing, and arithmetic. Math and reading should never go away, even in the summer. Right? Even if it's 2 or 3 times a week, even if it's a workbook, going to the library or purchasing books, whatever you prefer, right? Keep them inundated. One of the things I used to do with my kids, which helped make them be really well-rounded when we went to the library, was, I kind of said, hey, you can pick whatever books you want, but you have to pick different types of books. Right? So you got to pick one biography, one sort of arts and crafts book, one science book, fiction, and pick a kid's magazine. Do you see what I'm saying? See how that gets them thinking and reading, but it's their choice, but they're reading different types of material. This is necessary, you guys. Oh God, this is just so necessary. But my point is reading and math. Keep those things flowing with your kids. Old school ways work too. I know they have some new math systems. I'm not familiar with how they're teaching, but listen, the result is a result. Okay? All right. And so I do want to share some wonderful resources with you You do have to have those foundations, Teresa. They are critical. And if you guys see it all the time. I know you do. You go into the grocery store, you have something that is $2.99, and you give that kid a penny and they are lost. If they've already cashed that, like they don't know how to make those adjustments, right? So we can talk about all this new fancy math all we want. You have to know some basics. Make sure your kids can articulate, show you that they understand the concepts outside of a worksheet. Okay. I just want to share some resources with you. I'm going to wrap up. I am just so excited. This is my topic. Like, this is another area. You know, you guys know that I am a teacher by gifting, not by profession, right? My profession background is healthcare, okay? But my gifting is teaching. I have the ability to teach from a spiritual level and a practical level, period. I know my gifts, right? But anyway, super nerd. Okay, here's a book. If you guys have kids 4th grade through 8th, you probably can, it's an older book, but we know that books never die. This book is called You Can Teach Your Children Successfully. It talks about grades 4 through 8. And what it talks about is some of the foundational pieces that you want to make sure that your children are learning, whether you're teaching them or not, but you need to have something to, a barometer, right? To say, hey, is Joey learning this particular skill at this age, right? Absolutely. Make sure your kids can articulate. Absolutely. Right? So these have some great, I'm trying to see if it has an overview. And you can see that I have this book super marked up. We've used it for years. And even when my daughter was in 8th grade, I kind of went back through some of it to make sure that the curriculum we were using was in alignment with some of the standards that she needs to, you know, things that she needs to know at that grade level. Right? All curriculums and school systems are different, but there is a general base of knowledge, if you will, that kids need to know by a certain age, right? So think about the SAT. Kids are still taking the PSAT and the SAT going into college, right? So they need to understand a certain dynamic. And I wish I don't have it close. I have an older SAT prep book, but if you guys have kids in high school, the oldest daughter and I have been talking about this, and you read the material that is on the SAT prep, you better hope your kids are reading that type of information or that type of, those type of genres. Okay, let me keep going. Anyway, this is a great book. You Can Teach Your Children Successfully by Ruth Beechick. If somebody could type that in the comment section. You Can Teach Your Child Successfully. I don't know, when I bought this book years ago, it was $10.99. You probably can buy it used, you know, if you just want to have a reference, right? If you just want to have a reference, and this really focuses on reading, writing, arithmetic. It tells you some different ways you can teach your children how to understand concepts. It also talks about grade level guidelines when they are in a certain grade, what they need to be covering, and you want to make sure that those skills are in alignment, right? Because there is a general base of knowledge in this country that kids need to have. Yes, You Can Teach Your Child Successfully by Ruth Beechick. Another book, I'm going to save the best for last, but another book that's really good is called The Educated Child by William Bennett. Now, William Bennett has written many books, Book of Virtues for Children, but this is great because it's a resource that really just tells you, or gives you some examples of types of books your kids should read in different grades, what type of history and things they should be covering during those particular seasons or grades. And it really just has a good outline, you know, in terms of what they should be reading, right? So if you're ever looking for books or you're trying to decide what's next for them or what they should be doing, this is a great approach. And it's also a sort of secular approach, if you will, meaning that this is kind of in alignment with the United States school system, the public school system. So a lot of this stuff you will find, that's kind of like an overall outline. Does that make sense? In terms of school. So here's a good point. Like it says here, warning signs of a weak mathematics program. Right? So if your kid is doing math, they're having a challenge, it tells you right here, little expectation for children to memorize terms. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, tables and definitions. And it gives you some examples. So you have some help. Right? Whether you're teaching at home or even when your children are in school, you're not because they teach so differently now, you still need to have some practical ways to assess your children's education. Does that make sense? The Educated Child by William Bennett. And then lastly, this is my second copy, and I realized when I brought it in here because I have a copy already, and the copy that I have is really, the binding is broken on it. But this book is called The Well-Trained Mind by Jesse Wise. This is the premise of how I taught my children, especially my oldest daughter. It's a method of education called classical education. Anybody familiar with that? Classical education, right? And so what does that mean? It means that you teach systematically according to their age and grade, right? Because children that are younger, they don't have the mental ability really, right, from a brain development perspective to critically think yet. They don't. So when I see programs that are asking children in the first and second grade to analyze something, they don't have that physical ability to analyze. You don't get that until later. We know that the brain develops all the way until you're a young adult, right? That's why a lot of teenagers have this challenges making decisions, because their frontal lobe is not fully developed, and all of our decision making happens in the frontal lobe, right? So we have to understand that there is a systematic way. I'm not saying that this is the only way, but I'm just sharing with you the program that I use with my children. It's not a specific program, but it is a way to teach, and it's called classical education. And so classical education is broken down into three distinct categories, for, if you will, right? The grammar stages, the grammar stage, right? So that is the kids that are 5th grade and below. During that time, they need to be saturated with information, right? They need to memorize, right? Because those are the things. It's almost like remembering God's word, putting in your heart, right? There are some things that we just strictly need to remember. You guys remember back in the day, we had to know our times tables like that. We had to know our addition and subtraction facts like that. We had to know the capitals of each state. We had to know facts. Well, young children can comprehend or remember facts. They may not understand why they need to remember them, but they can remember them, right? And so that's called the grammar stage, basically, right? And so kids are learning a lot of information. They're not asked to analyze that information, but we are consuming them with information. Does that make sense? And a lot of rote memorization, okay? And what that does is that sets them up for the next stage, which is called the logic stage. Right? And that's kind of your middle school stage, where kids can now begin to critically think, right? So now they can take some information that they already learned and have in them, and they can begin to synthesize it and use it in the different subjects in their life. So if they're talking about history, now they can understand why they learned the capitals, why they learned the different countries and continents and things like that. And now it can all start to come together. Woo, y'all got me fired up. Y'all still there with me? I see y'all on here, right? And so that's the logic stage, really your middle school stage. And so it's a way that you teach so that they can start learning how to critically think. Now, this is a challenge a lot of systems don't have. They don't teach kids to think critically. And so when you can't think critically as an adult, you believe whatever you're fed. You don't know how to analyze information that someone has given to you. You don't know how to synthesize it. You don't know how to break it down to say, is this really true and does it make sense? Right? Opposed to someone just giving you information. Right? And so then finally the high school level, which is called the rhetoric stage, is where children take that rote memorization, they take that ability to analyze, and now they're able to articulate it, right? So now they can defend, they can talk about subjects, they can talk about information that they've learned, they can debate it if necessary, they can write papers on it, they can express their thoughts on a topic. And this is missing a lot. If you guys have ever worked, I'm sorry, I just have to say it. If you've ever worked with a lot of young people, they don't have that ability. So for those of you who have younger kids, this is just some information. You don't have to use this Right? But you can definitely glean from it. There's things you can do outside of school to help develop those skills. And so this book is called The Well-Trained Mind by Jesse Wise. The Well-Trained Mind. I believe it has, this is the 3rd edition. I think I had the 1st or 2nd edition. It's probably been, listen, I've been out of homeschooling for a while. It's probably been, it might be on its 6th edition. And the thing about it is it gives suggestions of, it does write from a homeschooling perspective opposed to the educated child, right? So this does give you suggested curriculums that can help in certain areas, suggested workbooks, suggested programs, museums, all kinds of stuff, and how you can set your day up. So this was my really sort of my homeschool Bible, if you will, that I taught, especially my oldest daughter from, and it was very successful. And I still believe in that dynamic of education to this point, right? So those are the resources that I wanted to share with you. Can you guys tell how fired up I am? I love, I just love this topic, hashtag nerd life. I absolutely love it. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concern for me? Let's go over really quickly about how to school at home. And one of the things I did forget to put here, so let me just add it, because you can't do any of this if you're not taking care of yourself. And I know we say it all the time, and I'm gonna say it. I'll say it every day here in the community, because I don't care, because you matter, and you've got to give yourself what you need. And so what I need, what you need, what Chantel needs, Teresa needs, may all be different, right? It may all be different. But you've got to give it. So if it's time that you need, if it's sleep that you need, if it's quiet time that you need, if it's a walk that you need, right? Because we're limited. We can't really sort of go out to the restaurants and things like that, to a movie, right? But you got to find what is it you need to keep you at your best self, right? Do you need to fellowship? Do you need to get on a group coaching program, right? And meet with other women, or call up a girlfriend and have an hour chit chat, whatever you need to encourage yourself. That must come first. And when you're in a good space, then you can attack this, right? And let me tell you, your kids know if you're not in a good space. Little kids and big kids, right? So we can't give to them what we don't have ourselves, right? We can't give to them what we don't have ourselves. So point number 1, get to know your children, especially how they learn. Are they a visual learner, an audio learner, or kinesthetic learner? Point number 2, routine is key. Kids thrive off of knowing what to expect, right? That's why they do so well in school. And then sometimes they come home and they just act in the jack, right? I remember my oldest daughter when, before I was homeschooling and that kind of thing, and she was in preschool, and then when she was actually in school prior to homeschooling, you're like, you've been in school all day, what's the problem? And they come home, but I was a first-time mom. I had to develop some routines and things like that myself. So it takes time, whether you're homeschooling or even that whole after-school thing. You have to develop routines. Kids thrive better in routines, especially our younger kids, even older kids, but especially the younger kids. Number 3, allow the older kids some autonomy. Right? Give them some autonomy in this process, right? Where do they want to be? Where do they want to go? It's a great time to have these conversations and really begin to work towards what it is that they want. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be their life. Right? Now, we're not just going to let them fall to the pits, but we want to now help them navigate their journey. Right? So give them some autonomy on how they will create their schedule and how they can accomplish these things for results. And now, if they don't do it, then you need to hold them accountable and take whatever action that you need to take. That's how I roll. So whatever you need to do your thing, right? So point number 4, understand schooling at home is not the same as schooling in a traditional school. So be flexible, right? Be a little bit flexible in that regards, in terms of whether you stay stagnant or let them kind of go a little bit more, focus on an area that they may be weak a little longer. That's okay. We got nothing but time, don't we? Right? We got nothing but time. And point number 5, be patient. change takes time. So if you've heard something today that you want to implement in your household with your kids, begin to implement it, right? But know that it's going to take a little time, but you can't give up, right? You cannot give up. It's like the toddler who will throw a tantrum. You cannot give up. You can't give up. My first child was the strong-willed child. You cannot give up. So create that, plan what you want to see and implement it. And over time, people will fall in line. They're not going to like change at first. Nobody does, right? But don't give up. Math and reading, keep doing that. I shared some resources with you. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concern? Don't underestimate the basics. Right? Remember, we used to use flashcards. They worked. We used to write things 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Guess what? We remembered it, didn't we? So don't underestimate the basics. Depending on the type of learner you have, some of those things are more effective than others. Right? Jasmine says it's been helpful. Great. I'm so happy that it's helped someone. Right? So read those books and allow kids to explore. Those are the things I left. Don't underestimate the basics. Flashcards, reading books, and exploration. Kids learn a lot through simply exploring outside, exploring nature, exploring their toys and different things. So much. Jasmine said, I'm going to take some time out to change up our routine and get it together. It takes time. You have babies too. But it takes time. You know your kids. You know how things flow. It takes time. It definitely takes time. I can tell you that. Because even when I had been homeschooling my daughter for, I think she was like 7 to 10, then I had my second daughter. Well, that was a transition. We had a new baby, carrying her around, nursing, doing these different things. So change takes time. So we have to be patient, right? But we don't have to give up, right? You can do this. So I want to encourage you today, if you have those children at home or you know someone who has children at home, encourage them and let them know they know their children best. They are smart. They can utilize resources to understand what their child may be learning or what their child needs. You have this and they have this as well. Any quick questions, comments, or concerns? I see my iPad is on 10%. Any questions, comments, or concerns? So if you guys want any more information about this, leave it in the comment. If you have a question, I love this topic. We can do whatever you want with it. If you need more information, if you want to talk to me one-on-one, it's fine. I just want to help because I know what it's like to have kids at home, to be working from home. I've done both scenarios. Getting dinner on the table. We're not really doing activities now, but I know how all that looks. And planning and routine is key, in my opinion. It helps everything work smoother. And again, it doesn't have to be rigid, as rigid as as I was, but you can definitely have a flow to your day so people know what to expect. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Point number 1, make sure if you're interested, and you should be interested in joining the Rebuilding the Inner Me, Rebuilding Self-Esteem After Divorce. Listen, everything flows from you, right? So when you're not feeling confident, when you're not feeling encouraged, when you have gone through abuse of some sort, especially emotional abuse, it's challenging to get those thoughts back in alignment with who you really are. Right? And that is one of the things that we cover in the Rebuilding the Inner Me 1 group coaching program. Go to the website. You can check out all the details, all the benefits. I'd love to see you there starting on Monday. If you have any questions or challenges, be sure to email us at support@divorcewomaniunite.com. We'll answer any questions that you have. I want you to win. I want you to win in this season. I want you to win in 2020. Right? Time out for the I'm going to try to. No, it's time to do. It's time to take action. You only get results when you act. And that's in any area of your life. Right? And we cannot allow our feelings to dictate our behavior. There's a place for feelings, don't get me wrong, but we cannot allow them to dictate our behavior and the things that we say that we want. Right? So stay encouraged. Listen, I believe we're coming out of this thing. This is week 7. right? And so listen, we as individuals, individual women, you single women on here, divorced women, wherever you are in your journey, listen, you're so much stronger than you think. I am so proud of you for making it this far in your journey, wherever you are, right? Keep moving forward. Work on this, minimize the negativity. With all this COVID and blah, 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 right? Minimize it. Get in to get the information that you need that's relevant to you, and get out. Get in and get out. Keep yourself at peace. Play your music, read your books, talk to your friends, whatever. If you got a hobby, do it. Keep yourself encouraged by any means necessary. By any means necessary, in a healthy way. Keep yourself encouraged. Right? I love you guys. Make sure you follow me on all platforms of social media. You might be in this community. You might be watching this by replay, but you may not be following me over on Instagram at divorce_coach7. You may not have been to my website, AndreaMStuckey.com, and you may not have followed me on Periscope, periscope.tv /at divorce_coach7. And I am on Twitter as well at divorce_coach7. So listen, stay encouraged in this season. I can't wait to put my feet in the sand on some beach. So I want y'all to know that as soon as this thing lifts, me and Gabby are gone. Right? So wherever fits our schedule, wherever we can get a hotel, we are out of here. We're supposed to be in Charleston on spring break. Right, so that's our first, that's our ideal place. But if we can't get there, we'll go to wherever we can put our feet in the sand. So listen, stay encouraged. I love each and every one of you. Listen, you know how to connect with me. If you want to talk to me, bit.ly /divorce liberator, all lowercase, all one word. Get on my calendar so we can have that free divorce discovery consultation. Listen, divorce is not the end all be all. You can live and love again. There is so much more life available to you, even post-pandemic. We're not going to be in this season always. So get in a season of preparation for what's next for you. I love you. Stay encouraged. Keep your head up. And as I always tell you, no matter what the situation or the circumstance is that you're facing on today, God is always with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Stay and be encouraged. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.